All right, good morning, KOTA Territory. Welcome to the KOTA Now First Sip on streaming specifically on our social media pages, whether that is Facebook or YouTube, where you are watching us this morning. I'm Humberto Ile Sanchez.
And I'm Kate Robinson.
First of all, Kate, how do you think the morning went with our first sip on Good Morning Black Hills?
You know, I've been really enjoying it. I love being able to do some research on some topics we might not otherwise get to talk about and just kind of continue learning some more about, you know, what you bring to the table, what I'm bringing here. It's all super interesting.
No, exactly. And kind of picking up where we left off last week, because unfortunately I was not here yesterday. Let's talk about more on the in vitro fertilization with the kangaroo, right?
Yeah. We had a kangaroo at the Black Hills Stock Show last week, so many people kind of got the chance to see something that, you know, you might not get to see every day, and unless you travel to their native Australia, you know, you're not going to find them in the wild around here. But they are endangered in Australia. So scientists over there have been working to kind of combat endangered species issues, and they successfully produced the world's first kangaroo embryo through IVF fertilization. So it's quite successful to see that happen. They're also hoping to start testing it on other animals like kangaroos, yes, but also koalas and Tasmanian devils. So kind of bringing those also kind of endangered species back to have a healthy population.
Well, that sounds very exciting, especially when it comes to, you know, being able to keep those numbers up. And as we can see there on screen, you can kind of see what the fertilization process looks like for the kangaroo, which is kind of impressive, especially when you get to that like level of science. Or level of, when you're dealing with those cells, it's quite interesting. But I mean, talk a little bit more about that. It's really cool to see that they're trying this out with koalas, with Tasmanian devils. I wonder what else they can try this on, because it seems like it's a very exciting time for science, especially whether it is for in vitro fertilization or other scientific research. But
like hopefully they can kind of start bringing it into other endangered species. I don't know about you, but hopefully we don't have a Jurassic Park situation in our midst. But this is great for you know, those animals that are endangered, on their way to being endangered. Maybe we can help rhinos eventually and other specimen like that kind of get back to healthy populations. But from one egg to another, we're also talking about some substitutes during kind of our egg crisis we're having here in the country.
Well, talking about some of those high prices, there was a study recently, kind of before we touch on those substitutions, Wallet Hub actually came out with kind of some numbers that our viewers can kind of gear toward. But egg prices rose nearly 37% in 1 year. How about that number, Kate?
Yeah,
37%.
That's a crazy number. You know, we reported today that prices for a carton of eggs can be up to $12. I was at a gas station in Spearfish last week, actually, and you know, gas stations, they typically have stuff marked higher anyways, but their carton of eggs was $18 at a gas station in Spearfish.
Yeah, no, and
crazy.
I was gonna say in here, if you can look at that graph, it's gonna show her the kind of the graph here from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, keeping track of how much on average U.S. consumers are paying for a dozen eggs. As you can see, you've got that little graph here, kind of. Look at that jump right there.
Yeah, the spike is huge.
December 2022 and April 2023. It's
and it's on its way back up. I mean, this only goes till April 2024, and it is drastically increasing due to the bird flu. Of course, it's only seeming to get worse. You just kind of hear every day that, you know, be prepared to start paying more for eggs. And if you don't want to pay more for eggs and you're looking to kind of find some different solutions to your issues with baking or breakfast, there are some substitutes that you can look into. So what are those?
I mean, some of the substitutes, you know, a couple of years ago you might have been like, well, that's too expensive. Well, now it's literally just on par with a regular carton of eggs, unfortunately. But you have one of them that, according to NPR, they said that Just Eggs, which personally I'm not a fan of, but according to NPR, it is kind of a weekend brunch. You know, it's totally egg-free, and that's mostly thanks to being made with mung beans. You can find it at most grocery stores. Usually a 16-ounce carton costs around $7, which unfortunately
Yeah,
in some states that's not far off from a regular carton of eggs. Thankfully here in South Dakota, at least from what I've seen, it's between 350 to 450, 480 around there. But
on the rise, but
yes.
not as high as California or Colorado,
Yes.
places like that, where bird flu is kind of running rampant. But it's also interesting. Just egg is a good breakfast substitute, but you can also kind of look in. It's not a great baking substitute. I don't know if you've ever tried to bake with it, but when I was a vegan, I did try to bake with it, and it's not a great substitute for that. The best one, I think, is also on our list, which is the aquafaba from chickpeas, which I found to be kind of the best once you whip it up, I guess, not just the straight.
No, and it's that aquafaba, which a can of chickpeas is usually a little over $1, and that the aquafaba is kind of just water from the can of chickpeas, and you can use it you can whip it up into a meringue or something, egg-based cocktails and stuff like that. But you can also use applesauce and mashed banana. That is the most basic one. That going back to the basics here for egg substitutions. If you're a big baker.
Yeah, that's right. You can also try firm tofu, a tofu scramble. Even those are good. You can kind of mix that up with like a sausage, kind of add some different spices. You don't, just because tofu is vegan, vegetarian, doesn't mean you can't eat meat with it, I suppose, but it does
and there
have a lot of protein in it. It does make a good substitute for those breakfast scrambles.
And unfortunately, unlike eggs, it does kind of take a little bit more time to prepare, but it is a good egg substitute. And like I said, if we were talking about a couple years ago, then I would have been like, well, it's a little bit too expensive. But now, it's quite literally the same price as a carton of eggs. So.
Yeah. So if you're looking to try something new, I mean, as the egg prices rise throughout the year, studies show that they're supposed to rise about 20% more than what we're seeing right now. So eggs could be up to maybe $8 to $10 a carton. But I mean,
unfortunately, we're seeing that. Like I said, that trend does not seem to be slowing down anytime soon. Both, enough of bad news. Let's move on to something a little bit happier. A little bit in the works, especially for our viewers here in South Dakota who may struggle to find a very constant internet source. Wi-Fi is a big talk of the town, big talk of the nation, especially with, trying to get those rural areas connected to that internet, which is, unfortunately, we're struggling.
Yeah, it's a little bit scarce around here. Some companies are working to better that. I don't know if you were watching the Super Bowl ads very closely, but T-Mobile has pledged to put more satellites into space to kind of give rural areas better access to the internet. And here in South Dakota, with so much of it being a rural area, only 33% of South Dakotans say that they have access to a strong Wi-Fi connection constantly, and that it meets all of their needs. So whether that's working from home, going to school, their kids going to school, all of those issues can kind of, especially when you're all at home in one place, so many people trying to use Wi-Fi at one time, it can really cause some problems there. There are some solutions that South Dakota is looking at through the after school network. They're working to specifically work with kids in rural areas who struggle with Wi-Fi to make sure that they're staying up on their homework, staying connected to their educators, stuff like that. We also have the Reconnect program, which is worldwide, which is USDA's program. They provide funding for construction and improvement of broadband services. It kind of, you can't, just create Wi-Fi out of thin air. So it does kind of make it hard. You need the funding, you need the infrastructure, you need the availability. So hopefully, as more people come to South Dakota, we have those things growing as well.
I guess the other bigger question is, how do you make it affordable?
Right.
A lot of the time you make the internet, but then it's not as accessible or affordable to a lot of people, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And I mean, those numbers are seen drastically here in the state, as you mentioned, especially with South Dakota ranking 35th in the nation for access to 100 Mbps broadband as of May 2022, which is, it's not the worst. We're not at the bottom, but we're also not at the very top. It's in the middle.
Yeah, that's right. And
we gotta work on that.
There are some places that you can go and kind of hang out if you need Wi-Fi and you don't have access to it, like your public library. All public libraries offer free Wi-Fi. I know cafes, if you go in and buy just a coffee or a tea, you can use their Wi-Fi. So it's just
And
Even
like,
though, again, that's not accessible. Getting a coffee or tea might be a little cheaper than paying for Wi-Fi every
right.
month.
And I was
which
going
is
to
about
say,
$60.
and plus you'll be supporting a local business if you
Yeah,
do that.
that's right. Super,
Yes.
super great all around. So.
I mean, have you used local? I mean, have you used Wi-Fi at a cafe or stuff like that?
You know, yeah, I do. Honestly, I kind of find my biggest struggle, I guess, around here is finding consistent places where my phone kind of connects to the 5G and 4G services.
Right.
Kind of over by Walmart, kind of struggles to connect. Over by the mall, kind of struggles to connect. So I do use Wi-Fi, you know, whenever I'm at the gym, whenever I'm in a restaurant. It just does make it easier to connect,
Right.
but you know, like you do have to pay for those services a little bit. But I also do enjoy going to the library and using the Wi-Fi there. I am lucky enough to have some at home, so like if I need to get any work done and I don't want to go anywhere, it's nice to have Wi-Fi. But it's good that we have places in our community that do work to provide Wi-Fi to those who need it.
No, exactly. And I know for a fact I used to be a very big person that would go out and kind of use the Wi-Fi around the area, especially when I first moved into Rapid City, which was kind of, for a good couple of months I didn't have Wi-Fi, so I had to go out and kind of explore a little bit, find those nice little hot spots.
Yeah, find your favorite cafe to hunker down in and get some work done. Yeah, definitely.
And it definitely does help, you know.
Yeah.
It's a good atmosphere. It's a good kind of get you in the mindset of, you know, get to work, especially with that accessibility. But, you know, kind of talking about getting to work, scientists are hard at work, and kind of before we wrap up here for SIP, scientists are hard at work at figuring out a way to get microplastics out of water throughout the world, especially because microplastics are a very big issue of the modern age, some may say. And unfortunately, scientists have found that they are everywhere, from the peak of Mount Everest to quite literally under the sea at the very bottom of the trenches.
Yeah, and it's now being found in our brains even too,
Yes.
so it's kind of crazy to see how that is changing our DNA even, you know, the DNA of not only animals, species, plants, but also humans, that's for sure.
Exactly. And I mean, the fact that, you know, they found microplastics in bottled water and breast milk, and that's just, I mean, first of all, that's crazy to think that, as you mentioned, it's gotten to the point where you can find it quite literally anywhere, even in our in our bodily systems, functions, and stuff like that. So. And
the first time I heard about microplastics was when I was big into sushi back in college, and we were doing some research class, some science class, and sushi is just filled with microplastics because the fish obviously come from the ocean, and the ocean's filled with plastic, so it's just, and then, you know, our drinking water, our rivers are becoming filled with plastic and everything, so you can't necessarily escape it, but it seems like scientists are working to figure out ways to remove that, at least from the waterways. What does that
so it's like we're talking about water here. Well, scientists in China have figured out, or have found a possible solution to kind of this microplastic issue in waters. We're talking about biodegradable sponges made out of squid bones and cotton. So, you know, kind of they tested this out. They tested it on 4 different samples taken from various systems of water. So, you know, we're talking about water from pond water, lake water, sea water, and they found it to be improving the water by 99.9%.
Wow.
Which, I mean, that's impressive, first of all, especially when we're talking about trying to find a solution to get this out of our water systems.
Yeah.
But some of the issues that they kind of are stumbling upon now is, how do you dispose of the sponge?
You get plastics out of the way, then that thing's filled with plastic, and then what do you do with the plastic?
Right. So that's still one of the critical issues that they're kind of trying to work on is, you know, we're able to get this sponge to eat up those plastics. But how do we make sure that those plastics don't go right back into the water once that sponge biodegrades?
Right.
Especially, you know, because we found a solution to it, but now we got to figure out the other part of that.
Yeah.
But in Australia's National Science Agency, CSIRO, and this is important because they've estimated that about 14 million metric tons of microplastic are on the ocean floor. That's 14 million.
That's going to be hard to clean up with just one sponge, but hopefully they can make it work in the years to come. It's going to be interesting to see how this develops, how other things develop to help with plastic, and along with how, you know, plastic are like how we are already, you know,
Right.
infected with the microplastics in our brains, kind of how that changes the DNA of humans and kind of how we struggle with that.
I mean, it's wild if you just think about it. I mean, how many microplastics or how many plastic items do you interact a day, right?
Right.
And it's some of the stuff that they recommended kind of to help reduce, you know. Recommended to help reduce kind of that plastic footprint is to avoid using single-use plastics. We're talking about those takeout containers, taking out food less and kind of cooking more at home. That also does help kind of, you know, reduce your plastic footprint. Another thing that you could do at home is kind of reuse certain items like reusable bags, reusable water bottles, and you know, reusable containers. As I mentioned, you know, a lot of the issue is those takeout containers. When you're going out to take out food, it becomes more of like, you know, those build up after a while, and then you can't reuse those a lot of the time. So you know, just being able to, you know, be aware of some of the stuff that you use. I mean, kind of how you can reuse some of this stuff. I know I'm a big supporter of reusable bags.
Yes.
I have my own reusable bag that I take out every now and then when I remember to. And then another thing is reusable water bottles.
Right. I feel like that's the easiest, you know, just to have one of those on hand. You can fill it up almost anywhere you go now, and they're easier to carry. They got the handles on them, so they're easier to carry than just a plastic water bottle, and it's obviously better for you.
And I know some places actually kind of reward you for having that. They bring it in and you get something, you get like a free refill of something or whatnot. I know some places around town do that as well. So, I mean, hey, if it seems like something that you are interested in, well, there you go. There's some ways that you can kind of reduce your plastic footprint. I mean, it's wild to me how from the thought of just using plastics product and throwing it away is just so much impact to the environment.
That's right. Yeah, it's going to be crazy to see how plastic kind of just changes the earth as it gets more and more prevalent in our environment. But
from in vitro fertilization in kangaroos to microplastics in the water, that is all we have for you on First Sip today. Thank you for tuning in this Tuesday. We'll see you back here on Thursday for the 4th episode of KOTA Now First Sip. But for now, thank you for tuning in. I'm Humberto de Sanchez.
And I'm Kate Robinson. Have a great day.